Tonight, Education Minister rips through record of the John Mahama administration on education in a statement to Parliament, claiming that the NDC government failed to make the needed investment, including neglecting to spend on textbooks.
The first time 153,000 teachers have been trained on the new curricula was when we brought in the standards-based curricula. Never has it happened in this country. And again, they profess to know about education. That is the sad aspect. But let me tell them that in the 8 years that they were in government, they bought not a single textbook, whether core or elective, for any secondary school in the country.
The Education Minister has been addressing Parliament today on government's achievements in the education sector. We are getting reactions from the minority side. We'll hear from the minority leader who is challenging the sessions made today by the Minister.
This is Top Story with Evans Mensah.
The Top Story is always brought to you by Gasim Cement, the nation builder, and Vodafone. The future is exciting, ready. He went to Parliament today determined to prove that the MPP's record on education is superior to that of the John Mahama administration. Education Minister Matthew Poku-Prempeh has been attacking the record of the previous NDC government, claiming they failed to pay for their own progressively free education program started under the John Mahama administration. He claims that the NDC let power without financing the initiative. He also insists that it took the MPP administration to pay for it when they came into power. He has been justifying today the decision by the government, by the Education Ministry, to roll out the double track system, and arguing about the investments that he says have been made that he insists have been unprecedented in the education sector.
Now we have heads of schools applying to also be on double track. Double track have become a symbol of quality. That if they are running double track, it means it is a good school. Why? Because students choose schools they attend. Government doesn't give them schools. If you don't like the school, you don't go. So for the 721 schools that we have, it can cater for all the kids without building another school. But many more people want to go to Kumasi Secondary Technical, for which there are 27,000 applications, and they can only take about 1,000 students. More than another school that had 0 applications like drop-on. So if the school had 0 applications, can I force a child to that school? No. So double track was to give access to our best schools for the less privileged to also attend. But we should ask them when they say that would he have preferred his son to stay home with a personal way? So those are some of the facts that I wanted to clear. They say teaching and learning materials. Right? The first time 153,000 teachers have been trained on the new curricula was when we brought in the standards-based curricula. Never has it happened in this country. And again, they profess to know about education. That is the sad aspect. Textbooks are not classroom materials. They are resource materials for every grade of education. And since time and from at President Kufuor, it is private publishers who publish textbooks, not government. So if you want me to force somebody to publish a book, maybe when they come to office in maybe 100 years, they force people. But let me tell them that in the 8 years that they were in government, they bought not a single textbook, whether core or elective, for any secondary school in the country. President Akufo-Addo has bought core textbooks and has distributed core textbooks for all secondary schools. He has bought supplementary readers for all secondary schools. It is what is improving quality, not just put somebody in the school, charge fees, have a huge dropout, and say you are doing quality education. That is not our understanding of quality again.
I say government did not provide textbooks to students prior to you taking office.
8 years. For 8 years of NDC government, they provided no textbooks. So I said 8 years of NDC government, no core textbooks or elective textbooks were procured for anybody.
Let me bring in my parliamentary correspondent, Joseph Gakpo, who joins us on the telephone line right now. Now, Joseph, another point he made today is about the what John Mahama and the NDC administration introduced, the progressively free education. He claims that the NDC failed to finance or pay for it.
Precisely. I'll tell you about that specific date in just a jiffy. But then, to begin with, one point as well that Dr. Matthew Poku-Prempeh raised. In fact, he took on the former education minister, Professor Dienano Pukwajiman, directly in the statement that he delivered to Parliament as well. Just to quote a bit of that, he made the point that within the period, the people-to-teacher ratio in the country actually improved under the NDC, under the MPP government compared to the NDC. And then he went on to make the point that when you look at the percentage of trained teachers, is also improved at the primary level. Then Dr. Poku-Prempeh says, in addition, and I'm quoting him directly from the statement he delivered to Parliament, he says, in addition, we met huge outstanding bills under the leadership of Professor Dienano Pukwajiman as Minister of Education on key supplies of education service and delivery. Then he went on to say there was outstanding bill of approximately 9 million Ghana cedis on capitation grants, 4 million Ghana cedis on feeding grants for special schools, 14 million Ghana cedis on exercise books to basic schools, and 4 million Ghana cedis on the supply of school uniforms, among others. Then he went on to say, moreover, there was delay in disbursement of capitation grants as well as feeding grants for the special schools, which ended up affecting the operation of schools. And he says within the period, government has cleared all the arrears to both the capitation grants and the school feeding grants as well. So he laid these challenges that he outlined with regards to the outstanding debts directly at the doorsteps of Professor Dienano Pukwajiman, who is the Minister for Education.
In the statements you read, he is more specific about what he thought to be the shortfalls under the former education minister, who is currently running mate of the NDC, of John Mahama. However, when he spoke to you outside Parliament, he was more sweeping about what he considers to be a complete lack of failure under her. Listen.
She has been nominated, and she is the vice presidential candidate of the NDC. She has not been nominated as the Minister of Education. So if you do, by your questions, reduce her to only the Education Ministry, you are by that sense saying that she's probably not fit for her position. She's far higher, in a far higher position now than she was. So I want to compare her handing over notes, which is objective, because she signed with what we have done. And I'm saying on every measure, we've done much better.
He says on every metric they've done much better. What's his reference there to this handing over note?
He makes the point that when it comes to specific analysis on the performance of the education ministry, and if he has to draw it down to the performance of Professor Dienano Pukwajiman specifically, then he would rather not make an argument based on the broad areas that he defined earlier today as the areas that the NDC administration has actually underperformed compared to the NPP. He will limit that analysis in terms of an assessment of Professor Dienano Pukwajiman specifically to what he had contained in the handing over notes that actually came to him after she left power, because that was my specific question to him, that he had actually gone ahead to outline a lot of the areas that he thinks the NPP administration has actually outperformed the NDC administration. So I asked him what would be his assessment of his predecessor, Professor Dienano Pukwajiman, and he says he will limit that assessment in terms of her in particular to her handing over notes instead of broadening it to the general conversation in terms of all the loopholes he says were found in how the NDC governed the education sector. And when you compare what is contained here, handing over notes to what the NPP has done over the last 4 years, he thinks that the NPP has actually done a lot better than the NDC, and specifically than what Professor Dienano Pukwajiman had done.
I mean, but that's not all he did today. There's far more that he attempted to break down in articulating what he believes to be the NPP successes.
So specifically, beyond the debt with regards to the school feeding grants and also the capitation grant that he says was standing that the NPP administration had to come clear, he made the point that even when you look at issues having to do with the capitation grant itself and the money that was being paid, the NPP administration came to find a situation where for every child, an amount of 4.5 Ghana cedis was being paid per year for the children's education so they can attend school for free at the level of the basic school. The NPP administration has taken it to 10 Ghana cedis per student, which he says is like 122% increase on that. And he says in that regard, the NPP administration has done far better. He went on to speak about the number of untrained teachers that we have in the country. He said in 2016, the ratio of people to trained teachers was one teacher to 52 children at the level of the kindergarten, and it was 1 to 43 at the primary school level. But under the NPP administration, it's gone up to 1 is to 37 at the kindergarten level, and 1 is to 33 at the level of the primary school. And for him, that's a marked improvement on what they came to see. He also made the point that when they came into government, they saw a situation where there was arrears when it comes to the progressive free senior high school education that the NDC administration was implementing. Evan, this is what we're asking about earlier. Professor Dr. Matthew Opoku-Prempeh says it was a promise to the people of Ghana that they kept. He says that to date, about 1.2 million students have actually benefited from the free senior high school program, and they are continuing to expand it with more than 400,000 people sometime soon. Specifically on the bit having to do with arrears that has to do with the progressive free senior high school policy. He says it's instructive to note that under the progressively free senior high school policy touted by the NDC when it was in government, they left arrears of 30.1 million Ghana cedis in respect of the 2015-2016 academic year when the program actually started with only day students. He says that there are sums been paid by the Akufo-Addo administration, and that this is also an amount that when it comes to those who were doing the progressively free senior high school education and they were day students, there were more than 120,000 of them that the money in relation to them had actually not been paid. He also did a general assessment of the performance when it comes to the West Africa Senior High School Certificate Examination, and he says between 2011 and 2016, the performance was poor, and he says approximately 75% of all candidates failed to achieve the required qualification for tertiary education during that particular period. But under the NPP administration, they've seen those figures go up dramatically, and he says in 2019, the pass rate in mathematics was about 65%. The pass rate in a number of other core subjects was around 48%, which shows that the NPP is doing far better than the NDC when it comes to the education sector.
I mean, and finally, Joseph, he also makes a pretty sweeping comment about textbooks and states quite categorically that in 8 years, the government, the NDC government, never bought or distributed a single core textbook.
Exactly. He makes the case that he makes the point that when it comes to the distribution of textbooks, for several years it's been the business of private sector individuals, and that it's just the case of the NPP administration where the conscious effort has been made to actually ensure that government-funded textbooks actually get into the hands of people at the basic and also the primary level. But he's very categorical that under the NDC administration for the 4 years and even before, not a single textbook was paid for by government as far as textbooks being handed over to students.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder whether he provided any more evidence to back this claim than just stating this, making the statement.
No, the specific evidence to back that is something he didn't specifically provide, except to explain that for a long time it was private sector business, which is what has changed over the last 4 years or so.
Well, Joseph, thank you very much. And on the question of the textbooks, if you listen to Professor Jane Nana Opoku-Agyeman herself in several interviews, she claims that to be one of her major achievements. She claims that when she came to office, in 2013, she meant a textbook to pupil ratio of 1 textbook to 3 children. And she also goes on to claim that when she left office, she had managed to move that to 4 textbooks to 1 child. I mean, but Dr. Marco Premper is creating a distinction here, claims that is not government-sponsored textbooks, but, private folks, etc. I mean, let me bring in Ranking Member on the Education Committee in Parliament, Mr. Peter Nochu, who joins us on the telephone line right now. Mr. Nochu, thank you for your time here on Top Story. So,
thank you very much.
I'm guessing that you were in Parliament today when the minister made his presentation. Let's start from this last controversial point about your government in 4 years never once bought and distributed any textbook. You accept that?
Well, that was one of the unfortunate information that the Minister for Education gave today. I'm sure he said so because they had neglected the basic school level completely. If he had been very keen on developing the basic education level, we would have known that during the tenure of the former minister, Professor Nana Jenopoko-Ajima, much was achieved as far as the supply of textbooks was concerned. I know very well that the ratio was increased very much during the period of Jane Nana Jenopoko-Ajima. So I'm sure he was not well informed. He didn't know that all those things took place. So it was unfortunate for him to make a...
Well, when you say basic level, do you mean kindergarten to primary 6? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, the basic level is made up of the kindergarten, primary, and junior high school level of education.
So that excludes senior high school. So
no, it excludes senior high school.
So my question then is, at the senior high school, is it true that you failed to invest in textbooks in your 4 years?
It is also not true. I can say on record that the textbooks that the current minister and the Education Service distributed to the first year students under the FCS were textbooks procured by the former minister. It is on record.
So what you're saying is that in 4 years, it only took you to the end of your term to buy textbooks that never came until the new administration came to power?
No, textbooks are replaced periodically. It is not every year that you print textbooks. It is when they are getting out of the system, reducing in number, then you print to replenish the stock.
So it's a fact. So it's a fact then that in 4 years you never bought in the textbook at the senior high school level.
If there were enough textbooks already in the system, as in 2013. Was there the need to print or buy textbooks? Why don't you wait when the stock is reducing? Then you print more to replenish.
But I guess the question to ask is whether, in fact, in the 4 years we had enough textbooks at the senior high school level.
Yes, at the senior high school level, at the time we left office, we had enough textbooks that was needed in the system.
Okay, let's talk about, former President John Mahama's flagship education intervention, the progressively free senior high school. The minister today provided figures, hard figures, 30.1 million cedis that he says you neglected to pay. Although this was your own baby, it takes the NPP to pay up for a policy that you started.
So, what we should know is that when you inherit a system, you have assets and liabilities to go with. He is always talking about the liabilities. He has forgotten about the assets that he inherited when he came into office. And I can tell you one or two of them. Now, you remember very well that there was this program of secondary education improvement project. Now, under that system, we had a lot of money from the World Bank. And if you remember also, during the debate on that loan agreement, when provision was made for the purchase of sanitary pads for the girls in the senior high schools, they made fun of it. And so he inherited that amount of money for the secondary education improvement project. He did not mention it that this was an asset he inherited. Then again, another asset he inherited was for the development of technical and vocational education in the country. He mentioned today that they have made strides in that area. But it is because of the assets that the former minister left behind. That's why he was able to achieve that. So you can only talk about liabilities, and he has forgotten that there were assets that he inherited. So in any case, if you inherit a system, be ready that you talk about the assets as you are talking about the liabilities. So you cannot pick and choose or whatever it is and make sure that people only hear one side of the story. And that is why I'm saying that he is not being fair to the former minister of education.
So you said the former minister left behind something that you claim that he's benefiting from, but I don't know if but you haven't addressed a specific question whether the government, the former minister, actually paid up the policy of the progressively free senior high school before you exited.
You know, the academic year system starts in September, so it's not like the financial year that we have. So at the end of the first term, that was when we left government. And let me also clear this issue that when you are in the last year, in the year when we are having an election, no budget is approved. You only spend on account. So all that money that you spend become money that you should pay when the budget is approved for you. So it happened that such monies accrued and they could not be paid before we left office. So if you take over from office and you are committed to the development of the sector for which you have been appointed, you only need to carry on with what your neighbor has done or your predecessor has done, then you move forward. So why only talking about the debt or the liabilities? Then again today, we mentioned at the press briefing that there was no chalk in the system when we were in the office. Yeah, but again, he said that he had to pay a debt of 4 million Ghana cedis for chalk. So I asked, if there was no chalk, how did you pay a debt of 4 million Ghana cedis for chalk that was bought by your predecessor? So there are a lot of contradictions in his statements today. But
we're in this country where, I mean, monies are budgeted for staff, actually spent, and the items we spend the money on aren't there, and the Auditor General always flags this as we spend the money, we claim to have spent it, but there's nothing to show for it. I mean, so would it be a surprise that we pay the debt, but the chalks aren't really there?
But was there any audio report that the chalk was never delivered to the schools? There's no audio report. So the woman, I'm sure the minister at the time, made sure that chalk was provided. She couldn't pay for it before she left office. He came to pay. And as I said, you must accept the liabilities of your predecessor and also acknowledge the assets of your predecessor so that you balance the equation. You don't only blame, but you must also praise where praise is due.
But talking about chalks, wasn't it under the previous administration where we had the former second lady make the point categorically that we won't give you chalk today, we won't give you chalk tomorrow? It became a big matter of contention in this country because teachers across the country were complaining about something as basic as chalks.
But she wasn't the minister for education at the time.
But he highlighted the problem. But he highlighted the problem of the lack of chalks.
Yeah, but the point is that probably she did not know what actually was happening on the ground. So the statement she made might not be correct, might not reflect exactly what was happening at the time. So probably she was only picked out of context for people to make a noise out of it. So I don't agree that what she said was the reality on the ground at the time. I wouldn't agree with that assertion.
Which part of what he said would you agree with today?
Oh, that there was no chalk in the system. I don't think she ever said that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm asking you, today you sat in the briefing today. He gave, for example, when it comes to the performance at the WASI level, provided details. So it says from 2011 to 2016, approximately 75% of all candidates failed to achieve qualification for tertiary education. He says in 2015, approximately 49% of candidates scored F9 in mathematics, and 37% of candidates scored F9 in integrated science. Then he comes to 2019 and says pass rate in mathematics reached 65%, the highest ever since exams was introduced decades ago. These are these facts that you accept?
Yeah, the minister failed to acknowledge something very important. A program he inherited, the Secondary Education Improvement Program. Money was made available during the time of Nana Jane to train science and mathematics teachers to improve upon the performance of students at the WASE level. And that is the result he's talking about today. But forgetting that investment was made in that sector during the period of...
so is that to say that you admit that your performance in WASE was poorer compared to theirs?
What he inherited and decided to improve upon is the results we are seeing today.
Yeah, I mean, my question is that
we should not take the credit as if he did something about it.
Yeah, okay. But I guess, are you saying that you admit that the performance was poorer, but his improvement is only due to your investment?
Yeah, exactly so, because Professor Nana realized that the performance in mathematics and science was low, and she needed to do something about it. And that was what she did by the investment and the training and of science and mathematics teachers for a very long period, and that is the result that he is talking about today, as if it was done by the improvement was as a result of his position as the minister this period.
I'm grateful. That is Peter Nochuzi ranking on the Education Committee in Parliament. Isn't it amazing when your network cares about you so much that they do amazing things for you? You guessed right. I am talking about the Vodafone Cash dropping all charges when you send money to all networks. Yes, you heard it right. It costs nothing, absolutely nothing, when you send money via Vodafone Cash to all networks. Just send any amount as many times as you want to on any network and pay zero charges on the money sent. So go ahead, make payments, show your love, make contributions, send money all you want via Vodafone Cash to all networks for free. Just dial *110# to send cash for free. Ready. 55.